Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Refresher, brought to you by the Recruitment Roundup and all of us here at BMS Performance. The Refresher is a much shorter episode than our usual episodes and is designed to provide key takeaways with a whole host of subjects that we talk about in relation to recruitment, sales training, and everything else that we speak about on the show. So hope it's really helpful. And yeah, let's get stuck into it.
It's a very, very competitive candidate market at the moment. So this is why the candidate experience is so important, because interviews, they should always be a two-way process. They've obviously, candidates have got to impress the client in the interview panel, but also you've got to impress the candidate, giving them the best impression of why your job, why your company is the better place to work over the other companies that they're interviewing with.
Yeah, I love that term. You've got to impress the candidate.
We could probably do a whole podcast just on feedback, to be honest. Could be a good topic in future, but just succinctly, I think it's important to look at the interview technique. So, for example, is somebody talking too much, which is a common one we see for salespeople? Are the answers not detailed enough? Are they sticking to a structure? Are they asking good questions? They're all general interview technique feedback, which is really important, because that constructive criticism will help them, if they do go forward to that next stage, they know what to improve on, or just common courtesy and helping out another individual for future interviews. If they're not successful with yours, these are the kind of things that you can work on to make sure you get the next job you go for. Really nice thing to do, and people come away appreciating that feedback. Even if they're unsuccessful, they'll take that on board. They'll have a more positive feeling about the company because you've given them something to take away from it when they've not been successful for your position, which is great. You want even the unsuccessful people, well, especially because, like I said, they're going to be more unsuccessful than there are successful. So there'll be more candidates out there in the market who've been unsuccessful with yourselves, but you want them to have positive feelings about the company, because when they speak to colleagues, friends, peers in the market, and they say, have you interviewed with this company before? Have you ever come across them? And they say, yeah, I did actually. I didn't get any feedback from, interviews. I drove 200 miles down the country for a second interview. I didn't get it, and nobody told me why. That's going to put other people off just through word of mouth. Word of mouth is so important.
It's something that's quite personal to me, because the candidate experience is all about the personal brand and the perception of the company to the candidate as and when they engage with them. And I think people tend to forget that ultimately, although we are the company and we're interviewing this candidate, on the other end, on the flip side, the candidate is interviewing us. And when those things aren't quite aligned, the personal brand doesn't go well, the candidate doesn't have a positive experience, and ultimately companies end up missing out on potentially some really, really top talent. And speaking about examples, I've probably got a negative example regarding how not to do it, perhaps. For a candidate that I was dealing with within the aesthetic market, they had a first stage interview. This is going back quite a few sort of weeks ago, and essentially what happened within that interview process, a candidate sort of came through that really ticked a lot of the boxes that they were looking for. But within that interview process, it became apparent following the feedback of the candidate that the interview just was not enjoyable. It was not a pleasant kind of experience. There was no sort of back and forth within the interview, and it was just probably an interview that wasn't done well. The candidate couldn't flourish. They couldn't get a real feel and a real taste for the organization. And then ultimately, the candidate ended up, withdrawing from the interview process, right?
The reason the candidate gave as to why they withdrew?
Yeah, well, the candidate ultimately felt like, look, the company just isn't right. Like, I just can't see myself working with these people. And it was a real shame, really, because they just felt like, look, in my experience, this is not the kind of business that I want to be part of. I don't feel like I've been treated in a way where I could see myself working well within the team. and that was the ultimate reason, really. So, from on the other end, the company they actually felt like the interview went quite well. They felt like the candidate answered all the questions really well.
Really?
They didn't miss a beat, didn't miss a trick. But doing the feedback and catching up with both the candidate and the company, the perception leaving, it was like, two completely different sort of conversations that were not aligned. And, ultimately the candidate, withdrew from that process.
What's the drawback on that then? If we think about companies that that we work with or we have worked with in the past who might not have been that acutely aware of how they're perceived in the talent pool, what have you seen as some of the negative impacts of that?
I think, we live in a society now where, word of mouth, reviews, all these things, go a long way with regards to decision making, and, just to where companies are sort of fallen down is, when they're not being aware of how they're seen within the market, when they're not being aware of, the reviews that they're getting, the good, bad, the ugly ones equally, right? And it's just that all plays a part in terms of when we're speaking to candidates and whether they want to work with this organization and they can really see a future there. So, that awareness is so critical to make sure that the organization, fits, what these candidates' perception is. And that's what it's all about, making sure that everything is aligned to, a successful recruitment process.
Yeah, I'd really encourage, and I do encourage clients that we work with to sort of take themselves on a candidate journey as if they were applying for a role with their company. Because if I'm a candidate right now and I was on the market, I'd be looking at the LinkedIn page. I'd be looking, what are the good news stories? What are the testimonials? How long have people been there for? I might go and look at some websites online, Glassdoor, some review center. Obviously there's a caveat with that. People tend to put reviews on when they're unhappy, not always when they are happy. So look at that on balance. But I think as an employer, when you're thinking of your employer value proposition, it's something that you need to be aware of, and then making sure that you presented well online. Thank you everyone for listening to that. Hope it was really helpful, and we look forward to providing loads of great key takeaways in the future on the Refresher, brought to you by the Recruitment Roundup. If you haven't yet subscribed to us or given us a follow, please do. It makes a huge difference. For those of you who haven't done this and want to know where to find us, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple, and we're on YouTube, and you'll see loads of content that goes out on LinkedIn. So be sure to check on that. And as I say, give us a follow. Thank you very much for listening, and hope this episode has been of great use.